Hi drug dealers, have you ever called CPS on a client? What's the story? Easter rain. This happened years ago, and I've been clean ever since. I've got my own family now. Back then, I was living rough and caught up in the wrong crowd. There was a girl I knew who was homeless and had just had a baby. That Easter weekend, I was walking down this trail on my way to meet some folks. I was supposed to sell them a bag. It started raining, which instantly put me in a bad mood. There were a few bridges over that trail, and a lot of kids would hang out under them to drink or get spun. That's where I saw her. She was passed out drunk underneath one of those bridges, next to some random guy. But the baby, her newborn son, wasn't under the bridge with them. He was sitting in a car seat out in the rain, crying, soaked, covered in dirt. I didn't have kids yet, but something inside me just snapped. I panicked. I grabbed the baby, dropped everything I was carrying, the stuff I was supposed to sell, and I walked off the trail. It was just a few blocks to the police station. I went straight there and told them exactly what I'd seen and where they could find the mother. Child Protective Services got involved, and eventually that little boy was adopted. Edit. Thanks for all the kind words. I like to believe I wasn't the only one who would have stepped in if they had found him first. No one in their right mind would just walk past a baby like that, sitting out in the cold rain while his mom and some guy were passed out. I just happened to be the first one there. A call that saved us. Thank you to everyone out there who's ever spoken up to protect a child. I wanted to share my own story, but from the other side of things. Years ago, I was the one CPS was called on. My partner and I were addicted to opiates. We had a regular dealer for a while, but eventually my partner found a new source and started selling himself. Our old dealer didn't take that well. I guess he wanted to hurt us where it would do the most damage, so he made a call about our kid. He told the cops lies, just made stuff up. When they showed up, it was just me and our child at home. The house was clean, there was food, and everything looked okay. They left without anything happening. But a few hours later, CPS came. The truth is, we were functioning addicts. We wanted out, we just didn't know how or where to even begin. When CPS got involved, we followed every single step they asked of us, along with drug court. No slip-ups. We both did 3 months of inpatient treatment, followed by another 3 months of outpatient care. We worked hard and did it right. By the holidays, we were back home, clean, sober, and reunited with our child. We've stayed clean since 2012. The reason I'm sharing this is to say thank you to those of you who've ever made that call. It doesn't always come from hate, it can lead to healing. That one report gave our kid a real chance at life, and it saved our family, too. She tried to trade her baby. It happened when I was about 15 or 16. I was still in high school, and at the time, I was selling mostly acid and ecstasy. I wasn't trying to get rich, I just wanted to save up for a car and, hopefully, college later on. There was this one girl I knew. She had gotten pregnant by some older guy who ended up walking out on her. Her parents wouldn't let her terminate the pregnancy, even though she clearly didn't want to keep the baby. I always refused to sell to her while she was pregnant. Just didn't sit right with me. But after she gave birth, not long after, she hit me up. She wanted to buy ecstasy. I remember her sitting in my car. She asked for like 2 or 3 pills, which would have been maybe $40 to $55 at the time. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. I'm gonna be real with you, I don't have any money, she told me. But I know you love your girlfriend a lot, so I thought maybe I could give you my baby instead. At first, I didn't say anything. I was completely stunned. I didn't even know if she was serious. After a long pause, I just told her to get out of my car. Later that day, I had my parents call CPS. I came up with a story that the girl and I were friends and that she told me she was planning to give her baby away in exchange for drugs. I don't know the full outcome, but from what I heard, the baby ended up being taken in by a relative and is now living a normal, stable life. The kid's in the squat house. Back when I was deep in a mess of an abusive relationship, I used to deal, mostly weed, shrooms, ecstasy, and acid. That life put me around some rough people, and I ended up calling CPS on 6 different occasions. But there's one time I'll never forget. There was this couple who used to buy from me. We always met at a laundromat. After a while, I saw them often enough that I eventually agreed to go over to their place. The second I stepped inside, I was completely floored. They had ripped up all the carpet, stripped the walls, and gutted the place to get to the copper pipes and wiring. The house had no electricity. No running water. The only furniture was some sleeping bags on the floor in what I guess used to be the living room. Then, I noticed a pile of blankets in the corner shift, 2 bright blue eyes peeked out. That's when it hit me. There were kids there, a toddler and another child who looked maybe 5 years old. Until that moment, I had no clue they even had children. The kids were filthy, clearly hungry, and the whole house reeked of meth so bad I nearly threw up. The dad must have noticed my face because he quickly said they were squatting and casually introduced me to the kids, like this was all normal. I made some small talk, excused myself, got to my car, and called CPS before I even shut the door. I gave the full rundown, location, the condition of the home, their names, everything I knew. They were arrested for squatting, and the kids were placed with relatives. Sometime after they got out on bail, they tried to reach out to me again for more drugs. I ignored them, but the guy the first was with at the time, my boyfriend, sold to them anyway. I found out they were living in a tent in a field with the kids. I was so furious we got into a huge fight. I couldn't believe he'd still sell to them after everything we knew. I ended up calling CPS again. From what I later heard, the kids were permanently removed after that. Not long after, the mom ended up in prison for attempted murder, and a few weeks later, the dad was locked up too, for check fraud. I just wanted to save her baby. But no one listened. I've never been a dealer, but I ended up calling CPS on my own sister. She smoked a lot of weed, nothing extreme at first, but things got worse. One day, I showed up to pick her and her baby up, and she was literally sitting on the floor getting high, the baby just inches away from her. That same day, she told my husband there was meth in the apartment and that her boyfriend was tripping on acid. They were always screaming at each other, and I knew it got physical. Once, he told her that if she wasn't holding the baby, he'd beat her. She always said he never slept, but the first time he stayed with us, he passed out like a rock. It was obvious her place was the problem. She was high for almost the first 5 months of her pregnancy and even admitted that to the doctors, so it still stings that she got to keep the baby. Then one day, she called me in a panic because CPS had stopped by. I went to get the baby, and her apartment was, I don't even have words. Trash everywhere, mostly bags full of diapers and old food. Every surface was dirty. The floor felt grimy when I sat down. The baby was only wearing a diaper and everything else he owned, clothes, bag, car seat, was crawling with roaches. He had patches of ringworm all over, including one the size of a coin. My husband swore he saw bedbugs in his seat. We threw the whole thing out and bought him a new one. We kept the baby for a week. CPS never followed up. She asked for him back, and we gave him to her because we had no paperwork to prove she gave us permission to keep him. I was afraid she'd say we kidnapped him. We took her to Walmart to buy some supplies, soap, ringworm cream, a car seat, but I knew I had to do more. The next day, I made a report as a mandated reporter and gave CPS everything I had. That was 3 weeks ago. Nothing's changed. I talked to her recently and asked about the ringworm. She said it's still there and the doctors can't do anything, which I know is a lie. It broke my heart to make that call, but I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. My husband and I have a 5-month-old of our own, but we'd take that boy in a heartbeat. At least we could give him a clean home. I call for updates almost daily. No one ever has answers. I feel useless. We've reported everything, cops, CPS, pictures, messages, yet nothing happens. I've begged her to leave her boyfriend. I've offered to take the baby full-time. She just won't leave. At this point, I don't even know where she is. She told me she moved out of state and stopped posting online. I wish I had better news. I just keep holding on to hope that he's okay, and that one day someone tells me I can go get him. The baby and the cigarettes. When I was around 17, I landed my first real job working at a Domino's Pizza. One of the shift managers was this nasty 24-year-old guy. He looked like something straight out of a cave, dirty all the time, smelled awful, and had a garbage attitude. But he always had quality marijuana and would buy me cigarettes, so I kept him around. That was my first time hanging out with older people who could get me whatever I wanted, right when I wanted it. One day, he set me up with one of his buddies who was selling mushrooms. So I met the guy, bought an ounce, and then made my way over to my manager's place to sell him some of the mushrooms and grab a bit of weed. When I got there, I realized both he and his sister, she was around the same age and had a 1-year-old baby, were living in the basement of this tiny house. They had their bedrooms divided by hanging bedsheets. No doors, just hanging cloth. The place was a nightmare. They were smoking indoors, all the windows closed tight. Cats were running all over the place. Bugs crawling up the walls. It smelled like spoiled milk mixed with mold. Every corner of that place had some kind of sour, nasty odor. It made my stomach turn. The mother of the house was upstairs. She was still living there, but clearly out of her mind, totally gone from abusing pain pills. The sister was addicted too, which probably explained why she barely reacted to anything. We made the trade in the basement, then I went back upstairs to throw away some trash. That is when I saw something that still messes with my head. The baby was sitting in a high chair in the middle of the kitchen. All by himself. And in front of him? A pack of cigarettes. The kid had ripped the pack open and was tearing into the smokes, chewing on the filters and spitting tobacco all over himself. I sprinted back downstairs and told the sister. She barely flinched, just started half-heartedly yelling, "Mom! Mom, get the baby," a couple of times, then gave up like it was no big deal. She sat back down, like she did not just hear her baby was eating cigarettes. It was one of the most disgusting and heartbreaking things I had ever seen. That level of neglect was something I had never witnessed up close before. I left pretty quickly after that. It took me 2 days to work up the nerve to call Child Protective Services. I held off because I did not want my manager to suspect it was me. From what I heard later, the baby got taken out of that house. They said the sister went to live with another relative after everything went down. I can only hope that baby ended up somewhere better. The bowl of beads. Yeah, this one still shakes me to my core. A while back, my girlfriend had a friend who introduced us to some neighbors of hers, this older couple, probably in their 50s or 60s. Total burnouts. Looked like they had not left the 1970s, like a bad acid trip still walking around. But they always bought marijuana and paid full price, so we kept making deliveries. After a couple of months, they started getting more chatty with us whenever we dropped stuff off. One day, the woman, who talked more than the man, started opening up about her family. She told us she had full custody of her granddaughter because her daughter was locked up in a women's prison. Now, this granddaughter, she looked like she was about 15, but something was clearly off. Her mind was stuck way behind, maybe like a 6 or 7-year-old. I did not know the exact condition, but it was obvious she had developmental issues. Toward the end of that conversation, the woman let something slip that made my stomach turn. She casually mentioned that the granddaughter was prescribed 30 mg extended-release Adderall. But instead of giving it to her, they would open the capsules, pour all the little beads into a bowl, and save them for themselves, for when they could not find meth or whatever else they were using. Then they would refill the capsules with crushed Benadryl so the kid would sleep all day. She said it like it was just some clever life hack. When we left, I got in the car and just sat there in silence. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock my phone. I tried to search for how to contact Child Protective Services, but I could hardly type. It felt like every single hair on my head stood up. I had goosebumps crawling across my scalp and down my back. I am a father of 2. And that moment, it hit me harder than anything ever has. You hear about evil like that in movies, in crime documentaries, but to witness it face to face like that, it changed something in me. The shack and the mac and cheese. This one's a tough story, but I gotta tell it because it changed me. It's the main reason I quit selling drugs and turned my life around. I must have been about 16 or 17 back then. I was still in high school, working a part-time job at Dairy Queen, and on top of that, I was selling crack cocaine and heroin. I was even selling weed and cigarettes at school. Yeah, I was young and dumb. I'd been dealing the hard stuff for a year or 2 at that point. I was making pretty good money, around $300 a day on average, which felt huge to me. But I spent it as fast as I got it. I used to use this addict's house as my spot to sell. The cops would call those crack shacks or projects. I gave the addict a better price on the drugs so I could use his place as a selling point. He'd also bring in other customers or help me sell in exchange for product. So here's what happened in that house. The guy was about 50 years old. He had a girlfriend or partner, and she had a little boy, maybe around 3 to 5 years old. I couldn't really tell how old the kid was back then. Honestly, I never asked because I felt ashamed for not stopping the mom from using. But that kid, I cared about him like he was my little brother. I'd cook for him when he was hungry because his mom was usually too high to do anything. One regular day, I showed up at the shack to work. I got inside, got my stuff ready, weighed and bagged the drugs. I knocked on the guy's bedroom door and saw him lying there, sleeping. His girlfriend was passed out on the couch like usual. The kid was just sitting quietly watching TV, so I made him some macaroni and cheese. I had to wake the guy up to get an update on what he sold the day before. When I went into the room, I saw his eyes were open, but something was wrong. There was white foam all around his mouth. It looked like an overdose, but not just a normal one. This guy had been overdosed for a long time, too long. He was cold, and I could smell it. His vomit was dried, and his eyes looked dried out too. That's when panic hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no idea what to do next. I sat down with the kid, watching him finish his macaroni and cheese, while trying to figure out my next move. Behind me, the mom was still passed out on the couch. Maybe she knew, maybe she didn't. I couldn't tell. I left the shack and drove a couple of blocks away. I pulled out my prepaid cell phone and called the police to report what I found. I sat in my car until they arrived. Since that day, I've been done with hard drugs. I still wonder about that little kid. He's probably about 16 now, growing up without a mom. Every time I see macaroni and cheese at the store, it hits me with this sick feeling in my gut. As for the man who died, I've accepted that I didn't kill him. But I wonder, if I had never been in his life, could he have lived longer? He had a pretty wild past before drugs took over. He lost his mom early on and didn't have a dad. Maybe that's what broke him. Here's something I want to share with anyone reading this. Don't judge people by where they're at in life, even if they're crackheads, as many call them. Some folks have been through the worst and never had a chance to get help or love. I'm just glad I was a friend to that man before he died, and that I tried to be like a big brother or father to that kid. I hope the kid remembers that someday. The dealer's house. At first, I thought my dealer was alright. He came on a bit strong, asking me to play Destiny with him since we both had PlayStation 4s. Eventually, I started stopping by his place to smoke a joint before heading home with my stuff. That was okay at first, but it slowly turned into a nightmare. He yelled at his kids all the time. They were probably about 3 and 6 years old. He screamed at them for anything, just for walking into a room, playing somewhere else, making noise, or even asking questions. Even when the kids wanted a hug, he shouted at them. If he actually gave them one, he'd tell them to stop being stupid and quit crying. He wasn't just abusive to the kids. His partner was half his size, really thin, not unhealthy thin, just very skinny. He didn't hit her, but his verbal abuse was terrible. He'd call her stupid, scream at her, and use that same angry, low tone he had with the kids. He'd talk through his teeth and then explode at the end of a sentence. You could tell she hated it, but she stayed because she didn't work and had to take care of the kids she actually loved. One day, he got so mad he pinned her against the wall and started choking her. I stood up and shouted, "What the fuck are you doing?" He caught himself and stepped back. She just collapsed on the floor crying. He tried to fix it by saying sorry, but then blamed her and told me it was her fault too. I left right then and never went back. I called social services and gave them the address. I knew they had been there before, but they never caught him in the act. Not long after, the police showed up and arrested him for something. I figured social services must have told them after seeing the weed or something. I'm glad they did. I wish I had done something sooner. The warning signs were there, but 2 things held me back. 1, I was the only person who came over to smoke, so he would have known it was me who called. And 2, I really wanted the weed. I was addicted bad. I was stuck in a bad cycle, but realizing I was a slave to that addiction helped me finally quit. I've been clean for years now. Ashley's house. About 4 years ago, when I was around 21, I worked at a chain restaurant. A girl started there shortly after me. Let's call her Ashley. We became best friends almost right away. She was nearly 10 years older than me, but you wouldn't have guessed by how she acted. At 21, that age difference didn't really bother me. We used to sneak drinks into work, leave during shifts to get drunk, and then try to sneak back in. We drank together all the time outside of work too. I knew Ashley had a son who lived across the country with his dad. She told me some story about how her ex was manipulative and that's why she lost custody. She said the son lied about her being crazy, and no matter what she did, she couldn't get her boy back. I believed her. Later on, I found a better job and that's when our hanging out pretty much stopped. But we stayed in touch on Facebook. By then, I was about 23 and pregnant with my son. Ashley had 2 daughters by that time. We agreed to meet so our kids could see each other. When I showed up at her house, I saw Ashley walking up the street toward me without her girls. The oldest daughter was probably 2. I asked her where the kids were. She said they were inside. She had left her 2 little daughters locked alone in a bedroom while she walked a mile up the road to buy cigarettes. That was messed up, but I still went in. I kept my son in his car seat on the couch next to me. Ashley was already wasted but poured herself 2 small bottles of root beer Smirnoff into a cup. She let her daughters out of the bedroom and turned on the TV for them. The house was clean, which really surprised me. It looked like a nice place. Ashley sat next to me on the couch and put her cup in the built-in drink holder. We started catching up. About 10 minutes later, her daughter said she was hungry. Ashley yelled, "I just fed you. Watch your trolls." I was shocked. Then the little girl climbed onto the couch and grabbed Ashley's cup of vodka. I told her no, that's not for kids, but Ashley stopped me and said it was okay, that it would probably help the girl sleep better. She let her 2-year-old daughter take a sip of her 100 proof alcohol. That was it for me. I was putting on my shoes to leave when Ashley's husband walked in. I knew him from the same restaurant where he still worked. He flipped out and asked Ashley if the girls had eaten all day. She said yes, they had grapes and cottage cheese. It was 7 in the evening. That was all the food they had gotten all day. I was done. I called Child Protective Services as soon as I got in my car. I believe the father now has custody, and he moved out of state. Thank God, because who knows what would have happened to those girls otherwise. Baby Twerk's stormy night. This happened a long time ago, but yeah, I grew up in a rough neighborhood. The drug game was just part of life as a teenager because everyone was involved. I was around 17 in the late 1990s, and there was this hardcore addict we all called Baby Twerk. She had a boyfriend, but she took his money and his car and worked the streets on the side to get cash. She'd page us every 2 or 3 hours, day and night. She was loyal though, and we used to joke that we dimed her to death, meaning we gave her as much as she wanted. There was one rule we always followed: never go to a dealer's house or their spot. It was usually watched by the cops or the customer could be waiting to set you up, which could get dangerous. But one Saturday night, my friend and I were hanging out playing Nintendo 64. We wanted to buy another Rumble Pack for the second controller when Baby Twerk called. It was storming hard outside, and she had her kids with her, so she couldn't walk to the gas station to meet us. Against our own rule, we decided to go to her place. Back then, we didn't have texts or phones that told you someone was outside. You just had pagers and payphones. So we showed up and waited, but she didn't come out. In the hood, most houses don't have gutters or porches, so if it's pouring, you either get soaked or go inside. We chose to go in. And man, it was exactly what we expected. She had 5 kids, the oldest around 7 years old. The place was filthy, no carpet on the floors, and there was a huge hole in the middle of the kitchen floor where you could see the crawl space below. 2 other guys we knew were there too. We heard someone in the next room trying to light up. Then her 4-year-old walked over to my friend and asked if he could go by, which we understood as wanting to leave or maybe get out of there. Suddenly, a guy appeared around the corner and we heard the unmistakable sound of crack cocaine sizzling as it cooked. We had a rule about smelling crack within 50 feet because if the cops pulled up and caught that, it was a selling charge. So, without thinking, we turned and ran out, tripping over each other and moving faster than I've ever seen us run. We had to wait until Monday to get more stuff. But that little girl's face stayed with us all weekend. It haunted us. It made us rethink what we were doing. Child Protective Services got involved after that. They took the kids, placed them with family, and arrested Baby Twerk. After all that, though, we went back to serving her and ended up getting our second Rumble Pack, this time without any guilt.